Hey, the Rulers DMO73 here, bringing you a very fun match between myself playing the Astema Asmodeus Metal Life Form kind of shenanigans deck versus Aaron, who is playing our updated Kaguya Haiku Brunhild. Let's go ahead and jump right in.
This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for product, and FoulLibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists,
as well as our guest lecturer members Vite Ramen, King Pearlshine, and Mognite.
Class is in session.
Okay, so here we are going into game one. Aaron Heynig back, long-time friend of the channel, finally back playing some Forcible with us. It's good to have him back playing Brunhild, Haiku, Kaguya, because Kaguya was unbanned, and Brunhild and Hanzo were kind of the decks to play with that, and Hanzo's not very good because Rune Rulers in general aren't seeing a lot of play, so we might as well just go with Brunhild. It also gives us access to Einherjar summon, which helps us make use of a package we've used before in the channel, being that Pandora Turbo package, with things like the harvesting season to try to mill. The other nice thing is that this deck doesn't have just one target for Einherjar summon. It also has Windia, which is also another great card. And on the right, we're playing Asmodeus Astema, which is kind of like the newest version of like the old Order Killer deck that we've been playing, like those old Astema, just kill anything that hits the field, never let them apply pressure, grind them out, and then eventually kill them kind of lists, only utilizing some pretty cool cards in the form of Windia, Fiola, some of the metal life forms like Weapon Fragment, as well as Divine Lightning as a way to be able to turn off Astema on the front side, which is just very, very nice. So going into game one here, we're going to be on the coin as Astema Asmodeus, which is pretty nice. This does give us the option of being able to just judgment Astema on one if he does hit that turn one Pandora, just to say like, no, we just don't want to deal with that right now and keep it off the board. Or we can just kind of sit nicely and set up for something like a reactive play with something to kind of force the Pandora to be bad. You see there Aaron burning into a Pandora off the top, but also a number 13. So if he can get to one in the graveyard, it's in a good spot. We do have that Metric Stone of Moonshade out of the top, which is very helpful because of a way to be able to just go ahead and pay 200 and go into seeing what we can mill off the top with Harvesting Season. Harvesting Season going to mill the top 10. We obviously want to hit a Pandora so that we can set up number 13. Windia is also not a bad hit here if that is indeed the only human we see. And it does look like it's going to be one of the Windias here. Now, the good thing about the reason why to try to go for the Windia here off the Einherjar summon is to get to Rune 2, so that, like, sure, we missed the Kaguya being live, or we missed the Pandora being live, but we can go straight into the having Rune 2 for Kaguya. Now, Aaron electing to pass on that. He doesn't want to go for that, so we're going to go ahead and just call Stone here with Astema, not Asmodeus. And the reason for that is we have a Cradle of Scorching Heat in hand. We're going to pay 2 and get that onto the field. This is a really great card just in general for this matchup in particular. It's just a way to essentially turn tapping Asmodeus into a way to clear the board, and it just kind of sits there until we need it, which is really, really nice. It also replaces itself, which is really nice there. And so then we just kind of pass the turn. This just gives us a way that doesn't have to involve casting a spell to be able to kill the Pandora off the board. Now, it is a little bit weak to something like Power of Immortality, but it kind of still does the job, especially because Astema will also get to trigger with whatever we kill off of the Cradle. So with 2 stones here, thinking about what we're going to go for here, does just decide to go ahead and pass the turn again, which I think is an interesting decision here. I think going for the Windia is probably a pretty safe bet. Windia is really good against Astema's, like, trying to generate value here because it just bounces back to hands. Like, you just pay 0, put it back in your hands. Astema can never really kill it. And so it's just like, well, that's never going to go to the graveyard most likely, and so we're never going to get to draw a card or produce will off of it. Some very exciting opening turns here from both players. We just see another Callstone pass. Do see a Mysteries of Zero, so building up a hand of good stuff to be able to have it seal 10. Dark Alice would be a really good way for us to get rid of that Pandora in hand. That's probably what we might be digging for Aaron. I'm just kind of taking his time, not wanting to give Astema any chances to generate value. And just looking for that Dark Alice to be able to pitch the Pandora. We're going to throw down our own Windia here. We said, look, this is a good card. I'm going to use it too. Again, it's that kind of form of like just generating in like value slowly over time. Going to go ahead and swing in for 6 with the Windia. He says that's fine. Takes him down to 32. You see, we do look like we have a Divine Lightning in hand to be able to turn off the Astema, which is nice. And we are going to kind of... We're feeling pretty comfortable here. We're going to have access to 1 will, potentially more. We have access to the board wipe. We do want to start using these cards that are in his hand. So we're going to try to go for a battle comes to an end. We know this is probably going to get canceled. Like, this is probably going to bait out a Kaguya, but if it does, it costs 3 at this point, and it'll cost him some life, so we get some added value out of it. But if it doesn't get canceled, then we can just rip all of the... We'd probably rip... Honestly, from this first one, rip all of the Pandoras out of his hand, or we might just say no to the Kaguyas. So the Kaguya is going to hard cancel it. Windia is also just a very nice card here in against the Kaguya, because like Kaguya has to successfully deal damage, and Windia can make it so that you don't get to deal damage, which is why in that moment, if it had resolved, we'd probably go for the Pandora, just to rip that kind of core engine out from underneath Aaron and say, like, look, we're going to go through Kaguyas, but long story short is those Kaguyas are probably never going to successfully hit now that I have a Windia that I have access to. Do see a Call Stone and hit that 4C Stone. With a tap out, so here's the interesting point here. We're tapped out, but we're not, and this is one of the reasons why that Cradle is so helpful. We have coin, so we have access to red and black. We are going to see that Pandora come in, and it's supported by sealed number 13 that are now free in his hand. Goes to swing in for 7. We're just going to go ahead and ping it with Windia. So we're in a pretty good spot here to be able to try to mess with stuff. He does have a Lorite in hand, which it looks like is probably why he's willing to throw the Pandora down now, because the Lorite could stop the trigger of the Cradle of Earth, or Cradle of Scorching Heat, which is not bad, but it does kind of burn out more of his cards. He would actually have the will to be able to do Lorite potentially, as well as a Power of Immortality. So if I have some way to get out of the Lorite kind of thing, he can he still has the will to be able to pay potentially do Power of Immortality. Ultimately, though, I am winning the kind of will investment sequence here, potentially based on what he goes with. Does decide to just go ahead and do Power of Immortality. We say, honestly, totally fine. I think that's not a big deal. It gets to come back. It'll come back into play tapped. We still get to get rid of the Kaguya. It generates us it gets a free card value out of it. Pandora will generate, I think, generating some will. The Pandora comes back into play tapped, attempting to use the will from Pandora, or using the will from Astema and the coin. We're going to go ahead and once it comes back, still before Asmodeus' effect resolves, use Flame of the Outer World to just say, get rid of that Pandora, get her out of there. Flame of the Outer World, great because it's unchaseable, so it is just a really nice safe way to be able to get that card out of there. Hitting a Ethereal Stone, getting to swing in for another 6, taking him down to 24. Aaron's sitting on a Lumia. That Lumia is not a bad choice here to be able to keep himself alive, especially if there's a turn where I try to go for lethal and then turn off Astema. He can kind of like regain all the life to make me turning off Astema not actually win him the game, which is pretty solid. Does look like a pretty reactionary hand here. Doesn't look like at least a couple of Lumias. Does get to use Einherjar Summon, finally getting to bring back that Pandora. Say, look, we've used a bunch of your resources now to protect this Pandora, so I think we're okay. Do you see an Athena in that hand? The reason why you're seeing some of the Olympians is the Brunhild deck is also making use of another package that's been gaining a lot of popularity, being the Tea Party plus the Olympians, which is a very nice little package to be able to support the deck a little bit better. Metal Helix coming down here, attempting to again clear the board, also kind of just trying to bait out cancels. We know that they exist, we know that we have to fight over them, and so it's better to just kind of make him use up the resources. Now choosing to use the Fairer spell here, which you say, okay, that's interesting. In response, we're going to go ahead and try to do our own Fairer spell to stop his Fairer spell. And again, We're going into our turn with the Asmo Astema, so making him burn through resources is very helpful, and there comes down the number 13. So we did get to use that out. He does still have access to Mysteries of Zero, which is really good if we go for a wide board, so we got to be careful about that. We're still going to, once again, before recovery, try to force him to use a bunch of cards here to protect this Pandora with a flash from behind. He says, no, that's fine. Astema is going to just draw that card to replace it, make every single removal spell essentially a cantrip, which is really, really nice. Hitting a lot of Moonshades here, which isn't inherently bad because of the fact that we have Inferno. Like, paying ourselves down for low life can be useful to be able to put our opponent to match our life. We're going to go ahead and pitch Rare Metal here during the main phase. And then seeing if there's any kind of response. What Aaron doesn't know is the fact that we're not actually playing any Metal Shield Solid or Metal Gun Solid in this list. And I wasn't the one who actually sleeved up this list, so I kind of forgot about that, to be perfectly honest. So I looked through the two piles and I'm like, oh wait, we don't play any of these. And so we just paid one red will to get Rare Metal RFG'd and do nothing. Which is honestly not bad. It's just something I would prefer to do during recovery. It being there is helpful for the sake of weapon fragment, being able to then get it and become a 10-10 flyer with barrier. So it's just a little bit of a mistiming in terms of when we're using these, when we're using this red will and paying down for it. So we both have a little bit of a chuckle about that, and then we're probably just going to swing in with this Windia and try to continue to take him down to lower life total. Swinging and take him down to 18. Now we might see this Lumia come down sooner rather than later. Ultimately, he doesn't want to have too much of his life be wasted. And it does draw him a card, so we are just going to pass the turn. Does just decide to go for it, so we do get another safe 6 damage there, which is really nice. Looking at those last two runes being Chance of Tranquility and Soul Resonance. Soul Resonance being a way to buy back a Kaguya, buy back a Windia, buy back something from the graveyard that's been killed. We are going to see that happen now. Question is, what are we buying back? Are we going to buy the Pandora again to try to fight over it? Or are we going to buy back the Kaguya? Yeah, we're buying back the Kaguya, potentially. Maybe the Windia might be the better choice here. Nope, does decide to go for the Kaguya just to be able to, again, start throwing down bodies and canceling stuff. Trying to get some tempo value back, which makes a lot of sense. Once again, just doing a lot of call stone and apply pressure with this Windia both decks. You know, it's been interesting to have decks recently that like are both control decks kind of smacking against each other, but then neither of them really have a way to remove stuff once they're hit board. Like Aaron's deck is a bunch of canceling and stopping things from hitting board, whereas the Asmodeus Astema deck is a lot of just letting stuff resolve and then killing it. So both decks have ways to just keep boards empty, which is one of the reasons why Windia for both of these decks is just so very, very good in this matchup, because it's a little bit easier for Aaron to deal with Windia because he can just cancel it, as opposed to my deck, which is just spot removal and will never be able to kill a Windia. But therein lies the problem with right now, is the fact that a Windia has made it to the board on my side of the field. Just double checking exactly what the stats are as on Asmodeus. We are going to go ahead and try to do the God's Art of Asmodeus in response to it performing Judgment. And what's going to happen there is we're going to see a Lorite, and this is probably where we're going to see a nice little fight. So Lorite comes down, I Lorite the Lorite. We see the Kaguya come down. Say that's fine. So the God Art gets canceled. Out comes Asmodeus. Asmodeus just has he's just a 200 flyer, but things with +1/+1 counters have swiftness on them. So he himself is a little bit of a 600 flyer with swiftness. So we're gonna get to swing in for 6 here. Says yeah, that's fine, I'll take it. Goes down to 12. If we swung in with the Asmodeus here, I wouldn't be surprised if we get an Illumia, but he does decide to just let the 6 go through, and we're not going to swing with the Asmodeus this turn. Every turn that we get that 600 damage in makes that Lumia feel a little bit less and less good, and more like we're just going to be using that Lumia to try to not lose the game in response to turning off Astema for some reason. The deck does run Satan in the sideboard, so there is a world where like we just start kind of flipping stuff. We could even get him low enough where we just flip Astema, kill our own things. Or we just flip Astema, start using our own kill spells on our Jade Rulers, and then just go for Stan to close out the game, which is tricky, and does kind of help us in this matchup in particular, because the only way to stop that would be Lorites, and the more will we have, and the longer the game goes, the more likely those Lorites have already been utilized, which means it's harder and harder to stop. You see, we do have that Athena in hand, which is helpful to be able to stop this damage. It would gain him some life back as well, because Athena does not need to successfully deal damage in order to gain life. Does run the gamut of Astema, still has not flipped, and so we got to be careful there. Aaron's also at a point where he has to be very careful whether or not he wants to call more stones. If he's already at 7 stones, that becomes a trick of like, do I really want to go for it there and just like know that I'm not going to haiku this turn or game unless I find a Dark Alice and sacrifice some stones? That's an interesting choice. Just decided to pass the turn, and in comes Megiddo, the Artificial Sun, at the end of the turn, just to try to wipe these 2 things off the board and kind of clear a path to get him down to 0 next turn. I do have a Divine Lightning in hand, so we're going to try to probably close out the lethal that way. We do see a Kaguya come down to stop it and see how much we can fight over it, and the answer is not at all, so we are just going to move on. I'm going to, that was before recovery, so now we're in recovery, calling another stone. We hit the Mysterious Stone, get to 4C off the top. Swing in for 6. Aaron says that's fine, I'll go down to 6. Swing in for 6. Says that's fine. Go down to 0. So we are officially at 0. Now we need to find a way to stop him from. We need to find a way to turn off Astema. So at that point in time, we're actually just gonna pass. Those 2 stones that he has, those Moonshades he has open, are able to just produce Void Will at this point. He cannot pay life that he does not have. So this is kind of one of those reasons of like, if he's gonna try to use a Lumia, the reason why we're not trying to turn ourselves off right now is if there is a Lumia, we have the advantage in the fact that we can respond to the Lumia to turn off Astema, because he only has 2 stones. But if he doesn't have a Lumia right now, then he's just stuck at 0, so future Lumias just don't do anything. Now he does have an advantage because he has more Kaguyas in hand, so he could stop it, but that's again one of the reasons why we're just passing turn here. And if he does go down to cast the Lumia, we can just Divine Lightning in response. The only out is if he has more number 13s in hand here. So the Lumia comes down. And we do not actually take the chance. We're going to let it gain the 12 back. I think that's a little bit of a misplay on my side, having the Divine Lightning. There's a lot of unknown in the hand there, so I think the thought was like, if he has a number 13 because he's at 7 stones, it's automatically free, so I just don't have a way to stop it, as opposed to letting him continue to burn out more cards in his hand. We'll get there eventually, and it's going to be okay. Which I think is ultimately not the right play, kind of in hindsight. Knowing that I have some burn damage in hand from the form of Dragon, I can answer these 2 Kaguyas very, very easily. And I think that was kind of the thought. It's like, I can answer these Kaguya's very nicely by, you know, with Dragon and Windia, so I'm not in concern about losing anytime soon. We are going to see a tea party from the cast here, which is helpful. It does have access to color at this point in time. In response to the cast of the tea party, we're going to go ahead and see that Flame of the Outer World to kill one of the Kaguyas, just to get it out of the way, which is going to trigger Astema and draw us a card. Just kind of trying to cycle through to maybe some better cards. Seeing a second Windia, this is very, very nice. It's probably going to get cast at the end of this turn if there's not a bigger threat, just to help keep up the pressure. So the hand for Aaron right now looks like a Mysteries of Zero, a Pandora, a Kaguya, and an Athena. Pretty good hand. Starting to run out of reactive stuff, though. Starting to get to the point where we need to get proactive. Now, the Tea Party does help with the Athena being able to give it quick cast. It's kind of one of the reasons why this little mini, like, light Olympian package has started to be slotted into, you know, heavier white control mid-range decks. Just because it gives you some added flexibility in the effects of, like, Hera, Aphrodite, and Athena. Just gives some good options. We swing in with Kaguya. We say, there's no chance. We're going to go ahead. We know you have a chance of Tranquility to be able to kind of sculpt your graveyard as needed, so we are just going to use Windia to try to pop that and just hit it for 200 damage so that she can't do any damage to us, which feels great. Oh, it does look like we might have two Athenas in hand. No. I'm trying to see what that last card is in the top. Sitting on Dragon, Windia, Witch of the Fallen Kingdom, which might be just something to cast here just to put another body on board at the end of turn, maybe try to bait out a cancel. We're not playing any of the witches in the sideboard that I remember, so we're not going to like get any kind of additional advantage there. If we are playing any witches in the sideboard, it's just Green Witch, which is helpful to be able to stop another way to stop Pandora or Kaguya from being able to hit us. Going down to 2,000, we're going to try to, again, cast out that next Windia. It would be helpful with Wind Witch, since we're at this many stones, to be able to essentially use Witch of the Fallen Kingdom as a pseudo-Lorite if there is a Kaguya that comes down here. Again, this kind of comes down to, do I remember whether or not those are in the sideboard or not, is the biggest piece. Is going to bait out that other Kaguya. We knew that was coming. The Windia gets killed. Totally fine. Next turn, we're probably going to see an Astema flip just to get those Kaguyas off the board and just no longer have to deal with them. Chance of Tranquility, will be able to put them back, which is acceptable. We understand that. We are going to see a Dragon come down here before recovery, looks like. Metal Lifeform Dragon. Tap down the second Kaguya. Doesn't get to recover during its recovery phase, and then Aaron's going to take 200 damage for every card in his hand, which will be 400 damage or 800 damage. So he'll go down to 400. This puts us in a great spot to be able to once again get him below 0 to try to then turn off with Astema. Probably going to see a Call Stone. Making sure I check and see exactly how Metal Lifeform Dragon works in terms of where I put it. Probably going to see a Call Stone with Asmodeus here, I imagine. Oh, no, just going straight to combat first. We're going to say, let's go in for 6. If he tries to block with the Lorite, it gets killed by the Windia effect. If he tries to block with the Lumia, he loses the Lumia, which we're fine with. And then we can swing in with Astema or Asmodeus. Once again, we're trying to take him down below 0 so that those Moonshade stones, those 3 Moonshades, become worthless. And those are important for him because he needs to be able to cast the Athena. does pay 4 here, and judges in the chat, we were playing as if because he had 4 life, he could pay down to 0 since it wouldn't cause him to lose. If we're wrong about that in the chat, judges, feel free to let us know. If he would have had to have successfully, he wouldn't have been able to play this card. We're going to go ahead and say, that's fine, you've paid down to 0. At that point, we're going to put the Windia back in her hand. She's done her job. We're going to go ahead and flip over the Astema. Astema getting its enter effect of trying to kill these 2 Kageyas. Try to just get them cleared off the board. And if he does decide to go for a Chance of Tranquility, then at that point in time, we just absolutely win the game. Because I think we have a fairer spell in hand to be able to protect. So the thought is that we can respond with a... we can respond to him trying to do Chance of Tranquility with Predator, with Divine Lightning to turn off Astema because he's already at 0. If he tries to go cancel it, we have Fair Spell to protect it. And at that point in time, his hand probably just doesn't have enough resources to be able to win the trade. And so we can sequence it and win the game, but we'll have to see exactly how this goes. So Astema's trying to go in here, trying to kill these 2. I think Aaron at this point is realizing, now that he's at 0 life, that he wouldn't be able to, because he has no redstones, he has no way to cast this Athena, even with Tea Party, and I think that's the big downfall here, because I know you can't pay down below 0. It's that question of, can you pay from 200 to 0 if you have an Astema as your opponent? That's the big question, but he certainly can't pay at 0 to go to negative, because you can't pay what you don't have, and so... there's no way for him to get to that Athena at this point, which is really unfortunate. We are going to see the Chance of Tranquility come down to try to bounce stuff back. And this is where, again, we're going to try to say, like, nope, we're thinking about it. Oh, we do decide to let him try to keep stuff. It's going to try to get us to determine all the targets for Chance of Tranquility. Obviously not going to ramp a stone. He's going to try to put pretty much everything back on the bottom of this deck, save 5 cards. And so for those of you who don't, maybe are newer, the way that the Haiku works is if you win Kaguya, if you have exactly 7 stones, 5 resonators, and 5 cards in your graveyard, then Kaguya gains flying, and whenever she deals damage, you get to recover all your 7 stones, or recover all your stones, draw 7 cards. It's kind of nuts. Because you performed a Haiku, 5/7/5. So exactly what I said was going to happen in response to that Chance of Tranquility. We're going to try to use Divine Lightning to go ahead and turn off the Astema. In comes the number 13, and in response, we had that protection of the Fairer spell to be able to win that trade sequence. There is no response there. He does use Tea Party to draw into something. He could absolutely draw into another number 13 just to see. A Dark Alice would also be fine here to be able to pitch to potentially draw into a number 13, just for more dig. But ultimately, though, does not see either of those things. And so, again, noticing that he cannot play Athena is going to let... the end result of the sequence is that Astema loses the text that says your opponent cannot win the game, or cannot lose the game because of Divine Lightning. And we move forward into game 2. So a very cool back and forth with both decks, really getting to try to make use of things. Seeing the early Windia, I think, in game 1 really made this an uphill battle for Aaron. He did a really good job of controlling the actions I was able to take, but not being able to put the own pressure through with his own Kaguya was an unfortunate downfall in this first game. Talking through the sequence, talking through if there's any other options. Aaron says, nope, you've got it. And so we're going to scoop it up and go into game 2. So moving into game 2 here, obviously the kind of intent for Aaron is to try to essentially get ahead before a Windia sticks, and once again kind of doing the same things that he did before. Setting up an earlier Pandora would certainly be helpful. You do see right there he has a very nice Dark Alice into Pandora line here, that if he just hit a white stone on one, rather than trying to go, which might be a little bit more beneficial, just for the sake of like being able to kind of get Pandora to the grave more reactively as opposed to proactively, because of the fact that he's dealing with a deck that's just nothing but straight removal. Like the Pandora never really got to super be online last game, and so we're probably going to see something like Dark Alice be really beneficial here. We are going to see that turn one Cradle coming down here again. This is already kind of setting up again I don't want those Pandoras to resolve, or if they're going to try to resolve, you're going to have to fight through it. This is one of the reasons why, again, I think that Pandora is probably going to be, or that Dark Alice is probably going to be his best bet, something I hear, because of the fact that he can draw, get that Pandora to grave, draw, kind of cycle as what you need to. Did draw into a number 13 there, which is super awesome, and get to, does see a Wish of the Fallen Kingdom there, probably just going to get discarded. Yeah, there's not much searching that goes off in the Astema deck outside of like Inferno, or really that's it, outside of Ancient Weapon Fragment as well, which we didn't see at all in game one. The advantage here being that he can go into the Pandora with Einherjar summon without having to use any will during his main phase. So it's a lot easier for him to protect the Pandora, especially since he has a Pharaoh spell in hand. He has a access to darkness for the Power of Immortality, and he has access to Lorite coming down here right now just to, again, stop that Cradle. Say, look, you're not going to try to wipe my board that way. Let's get rid of it. Does hit an Inferno and a Divine Lightning as the two cards off the top for Asmodeus, and then just has to pass the, and I have to pass the turn. Or Aaron has to pass the turn. I have to go into my phase. Second Moonshade here, not super great. This is the kind of ideal opener that he wants to start with. Now, I could go ahead and try to Judgment the Astema here, just to try to get ahead. I think that's kind of what I'm thinking about maybe doing. Do you see I have Weapon Fragment, but no real way to make it bigger right now. Going for the Astema isn't really super helpful right now because of the fact that it would be probably a really easy way for him to just go for the Power of Immortality and then reanimate the Pandora, and I'm just kind of like, I've spent 2 will to do nothing. We are going to go ahead and just pay down to play Ancient Weapon Fragment here. Now, we don't have anything in the RFG to hit it or attach to it, but it's kind of one of those things of like, threatening what it's going to do later, especially because, again, we said Aaron's deck doesn't have a lot of good spot removal. Threatening the fact that it's going to be able to start swinging and drawing me cards and everything else is enough of a reason to say, let's bait out that cancel when we see the number 13 come down. So Ancient essentially did that kind of probably on purpose to try to bait out a card that seems threatening enough to justify burning a counter on it, but not threatening enough that if I lose it, I feel like I've lost a ton of tempo. Do you see I have a Gradius? Gradius would be a really good tool here against something like Power of Immortality because of the fact that, like, before it kills it, it can remove all of the abilities, and so Power of Immortality's like ability is gone by the time the thing is killed. So we're probably gonna wait and see what else he plays here, and then potentially burn for a Gradius on the Pandora going into my turn. We do see an Aphrodite, we do see an Athena, we do see a Dark Alice. Just not much of a hand here from Aaron. We're gonna go ahead and start swinging in though. Swinging in for 4, swinging in for 1, swinging in for 2, taking me down to 27. And we do see that pass. And we're not going to go ahead and try to Gradius. We're going to try to move into our turn, which I think is a little bit risky. Before recovery, we're going to see that Gradius come down here trying to kill the Pandora. Now, because he has a Dark Alice in hand, there's actually a line here that Aaron can take that kind of gets around the Power of Immortality piece, where he can do, kind of just double checking for him how it works. You could do Power of Immortality, let it resolve, but then before it the Gradius resolves, you then flash in a Dark Alice, sacrifice the Pandora, and then it'll come back. Instead, we're just going to see the Dark Alice come down here and probably sacrifice the Pandora. So missing a little bit of that sequencing there to get the maximum amount of value off of it. We are going to get some value off of the Astema, getting to probably draw us another card. Feels like this hand that I'm looking at is probably a little dead. Does banish the other Dark Alice. Yep, going to draw an extra card off of Astema. That makes a lot of sense. if we're both going to be drawing cards, if we're in the control game of attrition, both drawing cards is very, very helpful. Seeing just a lot of spot removal, but not a lot of pressure. We do have some board stuff. We've got Dragon, we've got Fiola. Fiola's not super helpful here because not a lot of the chants are things we really want to stop. They're more things that are stopping us, so we want our cancels to be kind of cheaper. We do see a Tea Party here, which is going to start getting Aaron to start to play those. He has Aphrodite, and I think he has Athena in hand, which is just really to his advantage. Can really start applying pressure very, very quickly. And Athena against an Asmodeus Astema deck that doesn't have the spot removal for it is gross, especially considering the fact that she's a 9/9. So like Flash from Behind doesn't kill her, Gradius doesn't kill her. There's a lot of stuff that just keeps her alive, which is really, really gross. We are going to see a Metal Helix attempting to come down here in response to the swing from the Dark Alice. This is to kind of draw, recycle a little bit, hopefully get some better value cards in this hand, and also clear off some boards. So like this can potentially turn into a draw 3 because of Astema, which would be really, really nice to help fill up the hand. Just draw into some better options, maybe some better threats. Because right now, all that the Astema deck is doing is just trying to kill stuff, and Aaron's doing a very good job of saying, no, I'm not going to let you kill my stuff, which is gross. So Pandora getting in for an additional 2 damage, and then the Lorite taking me down to 23 because I paid 2 to get access to the Metal Helix. Now, having low life isn't a super big deal. Again, we have access to Inferno to kind of level things off, and we have kept our board clear, which means that, like, if Aaron overcommits, we do potentially just get to Inferno, clear the board, reset his life, and do all kinds of good value off of it. Just to help cycle there, we're going to do Flash from Behind, kill the Lorite, try to draw a card. We're not going to risk trying to kill the Pandora because we don't want him to Power of Immortality it, and try to draw into more cards. We don't want him to get that kind of value. So naturally, playing a 60-card deck does just mean that we have to dig a little bit more. Trying to get into another Ancient Weapon Fragment at this point. We don't have anything in Graveyard that's Metal Life Form. We are trying to see if we can maybe bait him to let us get through this cancel. Because the phrasing of Ancient Weapon Fragment does say, like, when this card enters, you may choose. So it doesn't target. So even though we don't have any in Graveyard that have Fusion Metal Life Form, in response to her own enter effect, we could pitch a rare metal and then choose that one as our choice at resolution. And so we're kind of trying to see if we can bait Aaron here and he does let the cast resolve, which is very, very nice. So we are going to try to say, okay, cool. Well, then in response to her enter effect, we're going to go ahead and pitch rare metal, can't search, but then hopefully this is going to resolve and we're going to get to reattach it. And Aaron says, hold up, wait a minute. I have a response before that enter effect resolves, kind of throwing my own gimmicks against me here. Does use Tea Party, does hit the Lorite, which could work out, but ultimately does decide to go with the quick cast Athena, which is gross, because Athena will be able to shoot Ancient Weapon Fragment for 600 damage before I get the rare metal on it, and then he'll gain 600, and then going into his turn, we have lethal off of this Athena with swinging in for 900 damage, and then getting her enter effect to trigger. So this is exactly the kind of thing that I said before, and I don't have access to coin, so I have no way to Inferno at this point. So Aaron playing that very, very well, holding the Tea Party for when he needed to, hopefully trying to see if there's some way for me to survive. But again, Gradius is still taking me 900 damage. She doesn't die. Flash from Behind would help the most, because it actually is a stat nag, and that would let me survive and take her down to being a 2/2, so then she'd burn me for 2 and then hit me for 2, which would be very nice. But we burned the Flash from Behind earlier, so he just says, let's just go into combat. We're going to swing with Athena, trigger her to go ahead and try to burn for 900 damage. We say, sure, we'll take the 900 from the burn, but before we die, before blockers are declared, we're going to go ahead and try to flash in a Witch from the Fallen Kingdom just to try to serve as a blocker. And Aaron's like, I'm a control deck. What are you thinking? I have so many cancels in my hand, and that's going to get killed. And so he takes it very handedly and very quickly, getting under the gun in game 2, pushing us into a nice game 3. So here in game 3, jumping right in, choosing to take the draw for the Astema Asmodeus, just like saying, hey, if you want to try to commit to trying to go for the Brunhild, for the Pandora right away, you're not going to have other will to be able to set it up. And so we're jumping in right away with the Harvesting Season. We hit the Forest Sea. We were able to ship a card to the bottom. Let's see what comes out. 2, 3... And unfortunately not hitting a single Windia or a single Pandora off of that. That is real rough. And losing 2 of the Kaguya's, which is not great either. Just a hard first mill coming down here. Going into first turn here with Astema. Choosing to call Stone with Asmodeus because we don't have access to the Cradle quite yet. So we're just going to let it go. And then we're going to go ahead and pass. Moonshade coming down for Aaron. And also a pass. Going to see a lot of Callstone passing, most likely here in the opening turns for both of these decks as they kind of set up. Neither one wants to pull the trigger first. Like I said before in game 1, the Astema list wants to try to stick a body on board through the cancels and then just like keep it there because Aaron doesn't have a lot of spot removal. Whereas Aaron doesn't want to commit stuff because I have a lot of spot removal and it'll get me a lot of value. You know, it'll generate additional value for me because of Astema. Flashing in that Dark Alice here before recovery, just to kind of sculpt. If he does have a Pandora in hand, this is a great way to get rid of it, as well as maybe a Windia, some way to be able to kind of make use of that Anidano summon and start turning on his Kaguya's, and discard a Windia there, as well as the power of Athenia, or essence of Athenia's power. Probably going to see Windy is kind of a really good card to be able to feel safe doing the Anidano summon with, because again, it's going to be almost impossible for me to kill it. So I'm not going to be able to generate the value off of Astema with it. Whereas this now gets him access to 2 runes. So now Kaguya only costs him 2, so we can start playing that line. Metal Helix coming down here at the end of the turn. We're just never going to see this card resolve, I think, in this matchup, because we are going to see that Fair spell come down here, and we're just saying that's fine. Gets a cancel out of his hand, kind of helps us to sculpt a little bit more. And we already have plenty of cards in hand anyway. So finally getting to make use of some cards, just trying to keep the board clear as much as possible. Hitting that card off the top, sending it to the bottom because of the Darkness Moon Fragment. Now we do have access to Asmodeus here, so we're probably going to go for this Cradle. Yep, Cradle of the Scorching Heat. And this is to say, look, this is again, are you going to try to cancel that, or are you going to have to burn a Lorite on this? Because I am going to keep the field clear using this card, which is really, really nice. So you can draw for turn. Calling Stone. Another Moonshade. Now keep in mind, in game 1 and 2, we never really made use of the Astema God's Art at all, or the Asmodeus God's Art. It always got canceled. We're going to try to do Cradle of Scorching Heat. He does not have a Lorite to stop it, so he bounces the Windia back to hand, and then the Dark Alice will die. Trying to decide what I want to do off of this Pandora. Ultimately chose, I think, to produce Will. And then we don't see any follow-up from Aaron there, so we're just going to go ahead and pass the turn. And then move to recovery. Once again, calling Stone with Astema. We hit Mysterious, or the Chaos Moon. At the end of the turn, passing, discarding to hand size, which gets us that rare metal to graveyard. This is an advantage for us because now it means you don't have to spend will to try to make Ancient Weapon Fragment live, which is helpful. We are going to see a end of turn, looks like maybe before recovery on his turn, Windia. So it's not going to be able to swing this turn necessarily unless he casts at the end of my turn. Ultimately choosing to just ship the turn there. Yeah, it does seem like he cast it during my turn then, or during his turn, so it can't possibly swing. We are going to see a pass. Draw for turn. Just trying to make use of the will as much as possible. We are going to see a flash from behind, targeting the Windia before recovery. It's going to have to discard the card anyway, so it's like, well, might as well keep something off the board. Move to recovery, call Stone. Hitting another Moonshade here. Aaron having 3 Moonshades could come back to bite him pretty hard, especially if life totals get lower or in like Inferno range. Does once again draw for turn and cast that Windia. Choosing not to cast it during the end step is, I think, interesting. I think the idea being that we can't really swing with it. If we try to, it's just going to get put back in our hand again anyway on your turn. So it like minimizes the chances of trying to lose cards to Astema, potentially. We are going to eventually need to start throwing resonators onto the board, though. Oh, nope, we did see the Windia cast during potentially my turn. Maybe moving to attacks. Ultimately seems like maybe deciding to just pass the turn. So at the end of the turn, we're going to go ahead and say, look, you've got a body. I'll put a body out too. We've got Fiola. He's not really casting many chants, so Fiola's just not doing much in my hand right now. It's better to get the creature out on board and, again, see if I can get something to stick or bait out another cancel. He does choose to let it stay, but has to discard due to hand size at the end of the turn. Moving to recovery, a card that seems like it will be very helpful in this matchup. We have a rare metal. So just going to cast the rare metal by itself, but the biggest piece here is a 4/4 with barrier that we can make bigger if we can get Asmodeus' God's Art to resolve. And Windia can't shoot it, which is the biggest piece here. We want to start actually applying pressure. And so we're going to try to move into swing with Windia. He says, shoot it for 2. And I say, okay, that's fine. That makes a lot of sense. There was really no reason to swing there. But we're just going to keep going. End of turn, we're going to see another attempted Windia, and we go, that is not going to happen. We are going to fight over this. And so we see a fairer spell come down to stop that second Windia. 1 is bad, 2 is worse. A fairer spell on the side of Aaron, going down to 36 to be able to pay for it. So unfortunately winning the trait sequencing there. Moving to recovery. This is again why I said that barrier is really helpful, because the Windias, even if there's 2 of them, it won't be able to stop the rare metal from being able to swing in, especially after we've used Asmodeus God's Art to give it +1/+1 counters. So we see an attempted move into combat. I go, cool. In response, we're going to go down, pay down to cast Megiddo. We know for a fact that this is probably going to get canceled, or at worst, it's going to put both of these cards back in his hand, which does the job for me. We see a number 13 come down here to try to cancel that, getting that out of his hand. Seeing what else is going to happen here. We are going to go ahead and get to resolve the Asmodeus God's Art, which is very nice. Hitting 5 uniques, so both Fiola and Rare Metal are going to have 5 uniques on him, which means now Rare Metal is bigger than his Windias, which is nice. Going to swing in. We're going to block. Attempt to block with the Rare Metal. he's going to go ahead and just pay 0 and put it back in his hand so he doesn't generate that free value for me for Astema. He is starting to kind of run me out of cards. Swing in for 6, take it, and go down to 30 or 24. So having access to some real actual pressure on this game now, the Windy is going to always be able to stop the Fiola, but the Rare Metal is going to be able to swing in for 9 damage a turn, which is huge. It's just uninterrupted 9 damage. And there is some advantage to me with trying to bait out a lot of his cards here in the fact that if he hits me too low and burns out, you know, I burn through his cancels and stuff, then Inferno is infinitely safer. He's kind of also kind of doing my job for him. We see paying 6 here with Athena to go ahead and play the Athena to burn himself out here. In which case, we're going to try to low-right her enter effect so that we do not have to worry about getting him gaining the life back more than anything else. Drawing for turn. Keeping in mind the fact that while Athena is on field, he cannot take damage, which is super helpful for him. Probably going to go in for a Judgment of Astema here just to get that, attempt to get that Athena off the board. He does have access to number 13, to Spirit, Power of Immortality, but we'll still get some good value off of it. We're going to fight over this, though, because it's a low-right fight. And we do see, looks like that second number 13 here to stop my low right from stopping his low right, from stopping my Fair Spell, or from stopping my Astema from being able to kill his Athena and Windia. So in response to the number 13, that we're going to try to go Flash from behind. Just to try to get some value off of this Astema, since it's most likely not going to be able to kill anything from the enter effects. So we're going to draw 2 extra cards. You see we draw into an Inferno there, or a Cradle, as well as a Gradius. Hoping to maybe draw into another Lorite there just to get that off the board, but unfortunately doesn't happen. However, we are at a spot now where the Athena swinging is kind of detrimental because it's not going to be able to kill Astema, and Astema is going to be able to kill it. It's a big piece here. Now that we baited out a number 13, this feels comfortable being able to grab Ancient Weapon Fragment. An Ancient Weapon Fragment can get that rare metal from the graveyard from earlier. So now I have 2 creatures on board that both have the ability to have barrier. And since that Athena is already on board, it's probably unlikely that he's going to be able to do what he did in that game where he killed her in response to her enter effect with an Athena. And so we're going to get a protected 10/10 flyer, which is very, very nice. It does tap us out of a lot of resources, but we do still have Will Coin, which is kind of important. Looking at the hand right now for Aaron, it looks like we have a Mysteries of Almerius, but he doesn't have the will to cast it because it costs blue and white, and he only has the black, white, and the green, white stone available. So if he had tapped for the Athena a little bit differently, he would have been fine there. But ultimately, Ancient Weapon Fragment is going to get to resolve, and is going to get a rare metal on it, which is awesome. So now we have quite a bit of resources here established against the cancel deck. Now, Athena's still good in the fact that she is a board wipe if she can swing, but it won't kill the Fiola, it will kill the Lorite, it will kill the rare metal that's by itself, but it won't kill the Ancient Weapon Fragment, and it won't kill Astema, which is pretty huge here in the fact that if he swings with the Athena, then Astema can just block. And it'll be a trade, but that's fine with me because I want my J Rulers to die anyway. He's going to go ahead at the end of the turn, just use Windia to kill... Gonna go ahead and use Windia to kill the Lorite. Makes sense, just get the body off board. The other thing to notice that I could block with Astema, sure, but I could also block with the Ancient Weapon Fragment, which then means that Athena... or it couldn't be pinged with... Windia to be able to then kill, stop the damage that it's dealing to Athena. So the two would absolutely trade, which is just fine for me keeping that off board. Now he does have the Power of Immortality, which is a nice card for him. We do have some ways to get around that in the form of Gradius. We are going to see a Dark Alice come down here, and we're going to see a Gradius in response to the Dark Alice targeting the Athena. This is to remove her ability to prevent all damage, and also she won't be able to burn the board at this point. Pitching another Windia. Do finally see that Pandora in hand, but it's a little too late at this point. We are moving to recovery, though, so if he has Mysteries of Almerius and Mysteries of Zero in hand, that's actually not a terrible... Oh, those look like exactly what the two cards he have in his hand. Going for the Pandora isn't the worst play. Lacking the Barrier isn't super great here, or because of the Barrier, Mysteries of... Zero isn't great, but it can kill Fiola and Astema, which does provide him with a pretty good amount of value. Starts to go for a Mysteries of Zero, targeting the 3, just to remind him, because again, it's been a while for Aaron, that if the Cradle leaves the field and goes to the graveyard, that's when for any reason, that's when the 800 damage burns the board. So if he doesn't want to lose his own kind of board full of stuff, then just to keep that in mind, that he doesn't probably want to target the Cradle, just for good sportsmanship there. And keeping in mind that this turn the Athena does have 800 damage on her, which is very relevant. So killing the Cradle would also kill his Athena, which he definitely doesn't want. So he does take back that Mysteries of Zero, which makes plenty of sense. It's just not a good move to play right now. Trying to see if maybe he wants to try to buy back a card using Soul Resonance, and it seems like we do. Looks like we're probably going to buy back, I imagine, a Kaguya at this point. Yeah, Kaguya to be able to start making Chance of Tranquility, get the most value possible. Stuff like that. Choosing not to call stone now, which I think is interesting. He's already at, I think, well, he already is at 7 stones, maybe 6, so maybe he just doesn't want to risk that. But I feel like having the extra resource could be really helpful here, because it would let him cast 2 of the spells in his hand as opposed to 1. We're gonna go ahead and post recovery just go ahead and do Flame of the Outer World and just kill the Pandora outright. I think we're going to use that to draw a couple cards off of Astema just to help refill our hand. Now from here, we need to answer the Athena. That's the biggest piece here. The problem is that there's the Windia. That's a big piece right now. is the fact that if I try to swing in with the Astema, then Windia could potentially just stop all the damage that she's going to do, and that's just not what I want. That being said, I could outplay that by using the Cradle, but I'm kind of trying to save the Cradle for things. Since I don't have a Windia, I'm kind of trying to save the Cradle for things like the Kaguya. So we swing in with the Ancient Weapon Fragment here, completely forgetting in the moment that he can't take any damage. So he's not going to take any damage from the dragon that I'm milling off of Ancient Weapon Fragment, but it is going to at least draw me a card, which is very nice. And then before damage, actually, because we see what we top deck into, there's a world where we could use that Gradius to turn off there's a world where we can use this to turn off the Athena. In response to potentially before damage, I think we are going to go ahead and see a Cradle trying to come down here. In response to the Cradle, we are going to go ahead and just use that Mysteries of Zero just to shoot the Astema herself. Makes a ton of sense, just to get her off board completely and no longer have to deal with it. Probably going to see that Windia bounce back to hand as well. Going to start fighting over this. Now, ultimately, the Inferno isn't a huge, losing access to Astema is not a huge deal, because it also gives me access to a new God's Art, which is helpful. In response to the Zero, we're going to go ahead and try to do Gradius. I think the idea here is to try to bait out as much stuff as possible before Astema gets flipped. So the Gradius is going to hit. Now keep in mind, there's a world where he could try to, if I had already dealt damage to the Athena, there's a world, then he cannot successfully try to do Power of Immortality on the Athena, because at that point in time, she'd gain the ability, but then Gradius would remove it. Now that we're on the Infernos or the Astema side, we do get access to the front side ability to trigger once per turn, that the Cradles gets us another card in hand, and then we can actually use Astema to call stone. So this worked out kind of in my favor. This was not done in response to the damage from because all of that was crit cast. There's a world where I could have done that in response to before damage resolving from Ancient Weapon Fragment. We didn't. We just straight up didn't, which is a little bit of a misplay on our part. Having a full grip of cards, though, a couple of dragons, another Cradle. Cradle doesn't really make sense to play right now. The dragons are good. We want access to Inferno, which is good. But we are still missing a way to turn off Astema. That is the big piece here. We know he has a Kaguya in hand, so trying to bait it out is kind of our best play. Just to say you have the Kaguya, but you can't go for a Windia this same turn. And we're running him out of cards, so it's very unlikely at this point that we're going to see Brunhild successfully haiku us with Hanzo, which is kind of relevant. Swinging in with the Fiola, this is going in for 9. We know he has the Windia in hand he can try to commit to. We know he does have access to, not this turn, obviously. Next turn he's going to be able to reanimate that Athena with Brunhild, if he wants. We are going to see him pay down, pay 4 to go ahead and try to cast that Windia again. Makes total sense. Still trying to swing in. He tries to stop the damage from her. In response to attempting to shoot her for 200 damage, we are going to burn another Gradius to attempt to put that Windia back in his hand. The reason for this is if Windia is not on the field when she deals damage, then the effect won't go. And this is a missed sequence that puts us in a place where the Athenia doesn't matter. Since we were at successfully going to be able to connect this damage, we should have done Inferno here. We could have done God's Art Astema and done Inferno, paying ourselves down to 1,000 life using the 2 Moonshades to be able to play the Inferno. And then we could have hit him for the 9 to get him down to 1. Then we could hit him for another 9. With taking him down to 8 or -8, and then we could have used Dragon to top down one of his stones, and he has 3 cards in hand, so he'd go down to -14. And the reason why this would have been better is it would have made it so that even if he does flip the Brunhild over, it pretty much uses all of his resources, keeps him without being able to play any other cards, and he would have been able to reanimate the Athena, sure, but he would have been completely out of resources at that point, and he's still below 1,000 life, or below 0 life. So the next turn we just flip over Astema, or flip over Asmodeus, find a way to kill it, and then go into Stan, which is just the proper way to be able to have gone this. So we missequenced it a little bit here. We're still going for the Inferno line to equalize our life totals. We're going to go ahead and swing in with the rare metal, which takes him down to -1, and then we use the Dragon to tap down one of his stones and put him down to -5. At that point in time, Aaron does just concede the game instead of either trying to fight over the Athena, but keep in mind that that is kind of what should have happened for the sake of it. Thank you for Aaron for being able to play this matchup with us. He concedes so we don't have to try to dig for the Astema trigger because he has no way to get back to it, but we hope you guys enjoyed this match. Deck profiles for both lists will be up later this week, and until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.